Welcome to the Kings Beat podcast. I am James Ham. Joining me today, Mr. Brenden Nunes from the Kings Pulse podcast. What's going on, Brenden?
Not all too much, James. Been watching a lot of EuroBasket, and it's scratching my itch for some basketball. So it's been a good time, and there's a lot of Kings-related players, actually.
Oh,
So I've been enjoying that.
All right, a lot of Kings-related players. No, I mean, it's the dog days of summer, and so here we are in this point where, you know, there isn't a ton going on, but it's good to see Domas out there, isn't it? It's good to see Alex Lynn. It's good to see these guys going out there and fighting and competing and being part of something big for their country. And I think it's fun, man. Like during this time of the year, usually we're scraping for content, and that's just the way it goes. I mean, we're getting ready for training camp, which will start later this month. I think media day is September, 26th, and that means training camp starts the next day on the 27th. So things will be rolling here very quickly. But until then, like having your players like Domas playing and getting to see, man, is it just me? Does he look like he's in spectacular shape?
It's hard to tell. I think you were the one that pointed out on one of these previous episodes is that often people will, it's easy to feel like that, right? That people are in better shape or put on weight or lost weight. And it's hard to tell. Haven't seen these guys for a little while. So I know you're definitely not the only one that said that Domas looks like he's in really good shape. It's hard for me to tell. I think there's even things of like somebody pointed out there's different camera lenses and stuff like this that could affect the way these guys are looking. I don't know. I'm probably overthinking this. But no, he certainly looks like he's in good shape. I've always thought he's in pretty good shape, but it definitely looks that way, yes.
Yeah. I mean, he looks good. I mean, that's what you hope for. Especially, I think playing with Valanciunas, you kind of get the like size difference. Like Valanciunas is a huge man, and Sabonis is a big tough guy too, but he's not nearly as just like just sheer volume size of the guy. He's definitely he looks trim to me. That's what Sabonis looks like. He's in like great physical condition. He took a couple of threes in the last couple of games, right? And we're starting to see that range and sort of the arc on a shot, and everything looks really smooth. Just how do you assess his game so far?
Yeah, when it comes to the threes, he went 2 of 7 in these 5 games. He shot 3 in today's elimination game that they played that was do or die against Josef Nurkic. And none of those went down, so he ended up going 2 of 7. I guess the shot looks okay. I still think that there's moments where he is passing it up for a different opportunity or kind of like hot potatoing at the end of the shot clock, and he probably should throw it up. But I think more often than not, Domas would rather get to the paint than take a jumper, and I think that's very understandable. I think that the big thing for Lithuania and Sabonis specifically is just there's a vast difference when they're playing through him and when they're not. Like, he really should be an offensive hub, and I think that's also going to be the case in Sacramento. Sure, there's other options, but he benefits so much from playing alongside smart players and being that offensive hub while guys are cutting and making short roll reads. And there was so much specifically today of getting him the ball on the right block and then just letting him go to work there so he can get to his left hand and nice finishes around the rim. So I think offensively, it's everything that you would want from him. Nice touch around the rim. He's averaged through these 5 games, and again, these are only 40-minute totals, just under 28 minutes, 12 points, 5.8 rebounds. The rebound numbers aren't going to sound phenomenal because he's playing alongside Valanciunas, and Domas would be the 4 in that pairing. 2.8 assists as well, and like I mentioned, 2 of 7 from 3, but also 52% from the field, so he's been very efficient from the field overall. Got to the foul line a lot in today's game. I think there were 3 possessions in a row where they got him the ball on that right block, and then he got to the foul line. So I think everything you would want from him offensively. If anything, the times where he wasn't great in those first 3 games, I kind of point more towards tough context with the rest of his teammates.
Yeah, it's interesting. Like the EuroBasket game is so different because once the ball hits the rim, you can swipe it off the rim. So it does play into, like, if you've got true 7-footers, they really do pack the paint. They stand around the rim because you can goaltend. There's all kinds of weird weirdness that goes on in the EuroBasket game. But I think playing alongside a big guy like this is probably a good thing. We talked about this earlier about him and Rashawn Holmes playing together this coming season, and that the potential for him to get some burn with another center, albeit a very different type of center in Valanciunas. It's just different. It feels different when you're watching it, and I think it's good that we're getting to see him like kind of stretch his legs. Every time I watch, I'm thinking they just don't know how to use him. His teammates don't know how to play off of him. His teammates like clearly have not figured it out, or maybe they are now. They're starting to, but that's what happens when a guy pops in from overseas who hasn't played with the national team like in all the other smaller tournaments, and then all of a sudden he's with you and he's better than everybody else, and guys really struggle to kind of find their place when you drop in a center of the universe player like Sabonis. And I don't think that will be an issue in Sacramento, and I think that we're kind of getting to see how a team adjusts quickly and whether they can adjust quickly. And I think NBA players adjust a little quicker because they're used to playing with different players. They're used to more like sort of player movement, trades, stuff like that, where like star level players move teams, or major minute players move teams quite often. And I think it'll be good for him to at least come in healthy and strong and feeling good. And depends on how far they go in the tournament when he'll be back, but it seems like this is probably a good thing for the Sacramento Kings.
Yeah, now they go into a round of 16 that my understanding is single elimination from here on out. And they got out of what I think was considered kind of the group of death that they were sitting in, and barely snuck through, played some phenomenal teams in Slovenia, France, also Germany. They went to double overtime against Germany, and Domas ended up fouling out of that game, actually. So I think that for sure context has been tough. And like you're saying, dropping in a guy like Domas, who is the best player on the team, should be the offensive hub. I think some guys maybe were feeling themselves, I guess you could say, a little bit more than maybe I would have liked. Like there's a young point guard on their team who I think the Knicks have the draft rights to, who just had a poor job getting these entry passes to Domas and maybe doing too much. There was one shooter who he can shoot amazingly, but he giving me a whole lot of Buddy Hield PTSD with all these my bads going on in all of these games, not just Lithuania. There's just a lack of like chemistry, right? These teams haven't played very much together. There's so often that it looks like guys are on different pages and not sure what sets are supposed to be run. So context is going to be really tough for all of these guys, but I think Domas did a pretty good job of overcoming that and getting out of what was a pretty tough group. So it'll be interesting to see how they progress from here.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you're Lithuania, you're lucky you made it out of the group, but at the same time, you also every game was super close. Like that's what it felt like. Every game, you talked about the double overtime game, but like all of the other games, even against Slovenia, it was close until the last couple of minutes. It seems like every time they take Sabonis off the court, that whole thing comes undone. Like,
and they take him off at the end of the game. I'm like, what is happening here? It's like 4 minutes left, and they just take him off. And I think it's because they're a little worried about running two bigs. I don't know. There's a lot of stuff that goes on that doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's kind of the point, though. You're playing with a bunch of people that you're not comfortable with and who don't know your game and don't know how to run play sets for you. And again, I think what we're seeing now is that, like, by game 5, they look a lot better. They look like they're starting to kind of figure it out a little bit. Anyway, it's been fun to watch. So, okay, well, so we'll get to the business stuff here. Thanks for tuning in to the Kings Beat podcast. Again, I'm James Ham, Kings Insider for ESPN 1320 and the Kings Beat. Brenden Nunes from the Kings Pulse podcast and the Kings Herald. No Sean Cunningham today. He actually took a trip to Florida and is in Orlando. I believe he's in Orlando for
he could be partying in Miami.
Yeah.
Wouldn't surprise me.
There we go. He could be trying to save Paris Hilton again in someplace in Miami, Florida. He's out there for the Sac Republic game, which has turned into like some weird, there's total weirdness where like the Orlando team sent some staffer to go cheat and like record their practice, and was, recording, taking pictures and video and sending stuff, and wouldn't leave when he was asked to, even though it was a closed practice. It was a closed practice, but I guess they had to practice at a park somewhere. Yeah, there's some nefarious stuff going on out there that, the soccer gods have to like kind of frown upon at this point. Like you don't do stuff like that for a championship game, especially against like a lower level team. Pretty wild stuff.
There's a Bill Belichick Patriots joke somewhere in here.
Yeah, it's like it's worse than Deflategate, right? So there was another one though. Like, was it the Patriots that did that as well, where they were recording, or was it?
I believe it was recording other teams' practices.
Yeah, like when they allowed them into their own stadium for like the walkthrough 2 days before or whatever, they were recording stuff. Yeah, so this is kind of weird, but I'm glad Sean's out there. The Republic are awesome. They've advanced all the way to the finals here. It's really spectacular, and nothing but well wishes for Kevin Nagel and his group. Just absolutely stunning what they've been able to accomplish. And secondly, I think it's really good that Sean is not in Sacramento, because I don't know about you guys, but this is miserable. Like, my watch right now says 99. There's no way it's 99. Yesterday, it hit 115 in Sacramento. Like, I think it's the hottest day ever. And now up here where I'm at in my neck of the woods, the smoke rolled in. So I don't know where the fire was last night, but now we're dealing with like this weird yellowy like sky all around us, and you can taste it. Like, we had a window that was cracked open, and all of a sudden the room started smelling of smoke everywhere, and we had to go jam a window closed. Yeah, it's just kind of weird. And so everybody out there, stay cool. One of my son's friends who's been staying with us, I know he went to work yesterday in the heat from like 7 to 3. He got home to our house, fell asleep on the couch at 4. I had to wake him up at 11:30 to make sure he had dinner, and drank some water. And then in the middle of the night, he got sick and clearly had heat exhaustion. So be safe out there, people. This is no joke. This is crazy. I don't know about this whole flexing your power thing. Brenden, you can shut your AC off?
Apparently. I don't know what is going on. Yeah, it's definitely been hot out here, and it seems like a lot of California is dealing with this, and who knows how much cooler it even really is where Sean is in Orlando, but I can't imagine it's any worse than it is here. So
yeah,
definitely getting used to it.
Yeah, shout out to De'Aaron Fox, who asked everybody if he should go to Cal Expo like on Sunday. Like, no, man, stay inside.
And everybody advised against it.
No, that's not worth it. Don't leave your house. Just have a pool put in, De'Aaron. Just have a pool put in. If there isn't already one there, which I'm assuming there probably is, just go swim in your own pool. There's no reason to go out in this heat. Yeah, okay, so we're going to talk about a handful of things today, but we started with EuroBasket. I'm hoping Sean has a great time out there in Orlando, and well wishes. But the show must go on, and we'll have him back next week. And we're going to start cranking back up to 2 pods a week, probably next week, because maybe the week after. I don't know. We're getting closer to the start of camp. There's little bits of news here and there, but nothing that's like going crazy. I think the one thing, Brendan's been watching all this EuroBasket. I've watched some EuroBasket. I did have my fantasy football draft this weekend, and actually Brendan came up and hang out on the boat this weekend. So
one of the two.
Yeah, it's 3, Brendan. We have 3.
Sorry,
but that's okay. That's okay. Yeah, so Brendan came out pretty cool up here, Brendan.
It was very relaxing. I just came up and got all the tea about the Sacramento Kings, obviously, and a whole lot of insider conversations, and it's obviously just what took place the entire time.
That's right.
Nothing but.
Yeah. Just float in the lake. That's what we do up here. That's how we roll. You get a noodle, and you just sit on a noodle and hang out and float on the lake for as long as humanly possible, especially in this weather.
That's not an over-exaggeration. You were floating longer than anybody else out there, just living in the water.
Yeah, I probably floated for like I don't know, probably 5 or 6 hours. I
Yeah.
don't know. Yeah, it was a good float day. Yeah, you come back and you look like a big raisin. Uh, yeah, I felt that. I'm like, hey, I'm kind of a little odd. Yeah, that, and then if you sit on the water for too long, especially on a day where there's boats on the, like, speedboats running around on the lake, then you have trouble, like kind of getting your sea legs later on. That's never fun. So, yeah,
I hope I have that problem one day, James.
there we go. There we go. All right. So, in addition to watching Domas in EuroBasket and some Alex Len, I mean, Alex Len has been, he's done perfectly fine for the Ukraine. It's good to see him out there actually getting some run. But Sasha Vezenkov, we're still not sure how to say it fully because now we have EuroBasket announcers saying it differently than what we've heard. But what have your impressions been? Because he's been damn good.
He has been phenomenal. This guy is really freaking good on offense. He's more entertaining to watch than these Domas games, to be honest. And to be fair, the Bulgaria group is a lot worse than the group that Domas is dealing with. But Vezenkov is the enunciation I'm going to stick with until I get educated. Otherwise, I don't exactly trust these EuroBasket announcers.
No, they're not to be trusted.
No, don't think so. But through 5 games... Sorry,
go ahead. I was going to say, I think everyone on Sabonis' team literally sounds like gingivitis. Like, every time they say a name, I'm thinking, oh, I got to go brush my teeth.
Yeah.
Like, you got the gingivitis.
Gorgonis, Yokobitis.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's a sexually transmitted disease. It is what it is.
Yeah, there's multiple forms. Yeah, it's tough one. It's tough one. Vezenkov, meanwhile, five games that he's played with Bulgaria has been putting up numbers. He's by far the star of this team, and was a star in the EuroLeague as well. Headed into it, was a candidate for the MVP, and then was also what did win the MVP in the Greek league that he was a part of prior to all this. But through the 5 games that he played with Bulgaria, 26.8 points, 12.2 rebounds. And that's on 49% from the field, 40% from 3 on 8 attempts a game, 2.2 assists, 92% from the free throw line, James. This guy is really good at basketball. And we got some Mike Brown quotes pretty much saying that, and I'm paraphrasing here, that you see how he fits on offense. It's positionless basketball. He does a little bit of everything. It's about who can guard out there. And I don't know the answer to that question, to be honest, but I think you see offensively right away how he's just a star. He can shoot the heck out of the ball, and the gravity that he has, he does a good job attacking closeouts from there and making the right reads. He is just phenomenal on the offensive end. It's actually shocked me, and he's playing 37 of the 40 minutes, and he's hustling his ass off the entire time on both ends of the floor. He has really short strides, so him hustling looks even more like hustle than I think most people would, just because there's a lot of leg movement going on there. But I think that's really impressive when you're playing the amount of minutes that he is. Again, 37 of the 40, and still be hustling to that extent and doing little things like getting boards. So I've been really, really impressed with Vezenkov on the offensive end.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to make the bold proclamation here. He's played himself into a position where he might be like the MVP of the EuroLeague. Like, he's taken a huge step up in his game, and he did it last year, and we're starting to see where he's, he could do it again. He did win like an MVP of one of the smaller leagues that they were in. But my point is that I don't think he's going to come over to play in Sacramento. Like, I'll just, if things continue the way they're going for him, and his team there bumps up his salary, why would you leave a situation where you're the best of the best and everyone knows you and you're, like, adored, and then go be a backup behind Keegan Murray in Sacramento? Like, I think that there's going to be some issues getting him over here unless the Kings, throw $4, $6, $8 million at him a year and try to bring him over. And is that worth it? And that's what the Kings are going to have to balance out here.
The only way that I could think of it making sense for him because, like you're saying, he's a star over there. He's only 27 years old.
Mm-hmm.
Is him believing that, say, he comes over for, just to throw it out there, like the biannual next year,
Yep.
that money maybe isn't that different than what he's able to make in Europe, right? But I think where the difference could come in is if he played extremely well and then became a starter in the NBA, his next contract after that could be an 8-figure deal. And is like, could that be a motivator? But you're looking a little bit far down the line. And that's just me trying to think of a possibility of how he would be motivated, because I agree with you. I think that his situation that he's currently got going on in Europe, being a star of a team, just to come over and be a backup. And honestly, I'm not even sure. I think that he's probably would be better than a Trey Lyles or a Chimezie Metu, but I don't know for sure. Like, we're also talking about EuroLeague MVPs like Mirotic in his old age, or Shane Larkin won an MVP at some point, and those guys weren't great NBA contributors. Like,
Nemanja Bjelica.
yes, who's to say that if Trey Lyles went over to the EuroLeague that he wouldn't look like Vezenkov? I don't know that I'd bet on that, but like, I think that that's a real question. So I think that maybe if Vezenkov wants to bet on himself and try to make big time money after his initial contract with the Kings, that maybe that'd be a convincing factor, but it wouldn't surprise me if that was a tough sell.
Yeah, the only thing that I think the Kings have going for them is that his buyout is really like minimal to get out of his contract, and that they can pay for his buyout. But it's also that he signed like a 3-year, 2.7 euro deal, 2.7 million euro deal. So he's only making like 900,000 euros a year, and at one point that was like, it was almost 2 to 1 euro to dollar. Now the euro is right with the dollar, so it's really almost like he's making less than league minimum or right around league minimum. And I think it really will come down to, if the Kings show a much bigger investment. We do know that they did something interesting when they signed Malik Monk, is that they left part of the MLE where they could sign a league minimum contract, but up to 4 years of league minimum contract. And that goes up really quickly. So it's like $1,000,000 in year 2, 2.2 in year 3, 2.4 in year 4. But that's still like, if you're looking at a guy who's making 2.7 million euro over 3 years, and you're offering him a contract that's more like, 5 or 6 over 3 years, then it was kind of surprising that he turned it down so quickly and he decided to stay. Because that really was the moment. And I guess if you're looking at the Kings roster and you're thinking, okay, well, you've got Metu and you've got Lyles. Well, Metu and Lyles one of them wouldn't have made the team, or you would have had to make some other roster adjustment if you were bringing over Sasha at this point. It's just kind of a weird situation.
Yeah, and I wonder, I'm surprised that the number was that low. I had assumed that it was a little bit higher. Not that that's anything to scoff at or anything. Still making close to $1 million a year is far from nothing. Yeah, absolutely. I would too. But I wonder like how much endorsements have to do. Like, I wonder what sort of pay that looks like being a star over there compared to like a role player in the US. Not exactly sure.
I'm going to now go on and look for Sasha Vezenkov olives and
yes.
maybe some hummus. And I'm going to see if I can figure out what kind of deals he's getting over there.
Yeah. The random little tangent, I guess, because you made me think of this. Lithuania's jerseys looks just like watermelons, and I've been trying to figure out, is there some correlation of like, is Lithuania known for their watermelons? I don't know what's going on here. They have the red, yellow, and green as their national colors, so it all correlates with the watermelon. But I swear that they are watermelon inspired, and if anybody knows why, or maybe I'm just crazy here, I'm very curious. I've been trying to figure this out.
Okay, but you do know that, like, the tie-dye, when they're wearing their tie-dye shirts, what's going on there, right?
I saw an article, and I've been meaning to get to it, but I haven't yet.
Okay, so back in the mid-1990s, Lithuania was an up-and-coming team, but they didn't have enough money to pay for jerseys or anything. The national team didn't. And I believe that Bill Walton hooked them up with the Grateful Dead and the Grateful Dead became a sponsor for Team Lithuania during the Šarūnas Marčiulionis years. And so they wore tie-dye. They wore tie-dye clothes all over the place, and it's a throwback to that time when they might still be like associated loosely with the Grateful Dead. I'm not sure. I haven't done the research on it, but certainly that was like the beginning of the tie-dye era for them.
Interesting. Yeah, and they're definitely still in full swing. Makes a lot of sense. These games in the group stage for Lithuania have all been home games except the Germany game. They're playing in Cologne, so the Germany game was probably a little bit favored in the other end, but the energy in these stadiums are phenomenal. I want to say it's like 18,000 people, and there's flags getting flown everywhere. The energy in these stadiums has made it a really enjoyable watching experience on top of just good basketball.
Oh yeah, man. The Europeans, especially like the Baltic region, they love their basketball. All of that area there, they love their basketball. I know my former partner at Cowbell Kingdom, John Santiago, actually went to he toured a bunch of the countries over there. He actually went to the Drazen Petrovic Museum. And Drazen Petrovic's mom runs the museum or is there all the time, and he actually met her and talked to her. And yeah, it's crazy. They absolutely love their basketball. And I like Sabonis is first of all, he's lineage. His dad was such a great player and everything else. But he's a household name in Europe, and I think it'll bring a large fan base to Sacramento this coming year. It should be really interesting. Anyway, yeah. So Vezenkov, he looks good. He's you kind of got like a older prospect. What is he? 26 going on 27.
I think he's 27. Yes.
Yeah, 27. Yeah, and so maybe he does make his way over next year, but I'm gonna guess that that's probably not gonna happen. Anyway, okay, so Brenden, let's get to our Tuesday overreactions, even though it's Wednesday. Tuesday overreactions, which is Sean's least favorite part of the show. But we had some weird news. It popped off yesterday, day before. Rumors of the Sacramento Kings being interested in Jordan Clarkson. And I just dove deep into the shooting guard rotation and how much depth the Kings have at the shooting guard spot, and now we hear this sort of murmur that the Kings are one of a handful of teams that had called on Jordan Clarkson. Now, I think I'll put an asterisk by this. I'm gonna guess this is old news. I'm gonna guess that the Kings called on him, and I've heard that maybe it happened around the time the Rudy Gobert trade happened, which means it happened right around the start of free agency before the Kings signed Malik Monk. And I don't know, what are your thoughts? Because I really like Jordan Clarkson as a player. The Kings have been linked to Jordan Clarkson multiple times over the last 5 years, but it's kind of you kind of made your bed now. You went a different direction because clearly you got whatever you were offering wasn't enough. Is that kind of where you're at with this, or you're bring on Jordan Clarkson?
Yeah, I know that there's some people that fall into the Kings just aren't a very good team. They should bring on as much talent as they can, even though there is positional overlap. I don't agree. I think that if you're having to give up an asset for someone, I'd rather get a player that maybe fills more of a position of need. I think the 2-guard spot is the most clogged spot on the entire roster. And I don't really see Clarkson as a 3. I guess you could pitch moving Herder to the 3. I think that Herder's better covering guards than wings and bigger players. So it does feel repetitive after Malik Monk. I think prior to the Malik Monk signing that Clarkson would have made a lot of sense, but I don't know. He can definitely score the ball. I don't think that he brings you much on the defensive end, but these microwave scorers, I don't think Terence Davis is somebody that I'm not picking up a player because of, but I also think that he factors in when it comes to am I willing to give up an asset for Jordan Clarkson because Terence Davis is also still on this roster. Like, that's talking even after Malik Monk. Like, I don't know. Clarkson doesn't make the most sense to me. He's got one more year after this on a $14.2 million player option. Who knows what he'll end up doing with that, but it feels repetitive to me, James. Where are you at?
Yeah, I kind of feel the same. Like, we can kind of break it down. I mean, we know that Fox is going to play like 33 to 35 minutes. He's played 35 minutes in each of the last 2 seasons. You know that Davion Mitchell is going to play 25 to 27 minutes. You're already like out of point guard minutes. So, I mean, that's what, 60 minutes at a minimum. Yeah, so I already have to steal 12 minutes from the shooting guard position. You get to the shooting guard position, and, you know, we can start breaking down minutes for Herter and for Monk. But I don't even know if there's room for Terence Davis. And if there is room for Terence Davis, there's not room for Kent Bazemore. You know,
Keon
like
Ellis.
Yeah, like Keon Ellis. Well, I mean, you say that, but at the same time, like, when you have a player who comes into Summer League and shows that he's like an elite defensive prospect on the perimeter, and then he shoots 54% from 3, you kind of go, okay, wait a sec, what are we doing here? Because maybe he's not, I mean, he's, what, 22, 23? Oh, no, 21 going on 22. Like, he's not like a super young prospect. He's a prospect that maybe could play if you needed him to. And certainly if it's not this year, it could be next year. And you don't need a bunch of extra players that kind of play the same position. And I get it. Like, I know Jeff Petrie, like, I wrote something about this years ago, searching for Bobby Jackson. Because there's a movie called Searching for Bobby Fischer, who Bobby Fischer was a chess savant, a grandmaster at like age like 12. Anyway, the Bobby Jackson thing, like, once Jeff Petrie found Bobby Jackson and kind of realized that this was an ingredient that was like sorely missing from the team, and he had tried different versions of that, like Vernon Maxwell, John Barry, you know, like Anthony Peeler. But realistically, when you found Bobby Jackson and you had this energy guy that does all this craziness, and you know, there's so many shots that he takes that you're like, oh no, what are you doing? And then it goes in, you're like, okay, I'm gonna live with that because you're Bobby Jackson. Like, it's an energy burst. It's something that changes everything. And I get it. You know, like, later on, Petrie drafted Quincy Doobie, hoping that he would be that guy. We kept seeing him look for that player again and again, and never really found him again. When I look at Jordan Clarkson, I put him in that Bobby Jackson. You know, he might even be better than Bobby Jackson, or at least he has a longer leash than Bobby Jackson to go out and score more points. And it's interesting because those guys don't come along all the time. You know, you got Lou Williams, you got Jamal Crawford, you got Jordan Clarkson, and then, like, who else? And so I kind of feel like when the Kings made the trade for Herter and the signing of Malik Monk, the Monk signing was very specific. They were searching for the Bobby Jackson type player, the guy who can come off the bench without a conscience and just fire away and have free reign and score as many points as possible and give you an energy boost. And, you know, Monk is coming off a year where he started like 37 games for the Lakers, but those are like some of the few starts he's had in his career. And so when I look at Clarkson, I think there was a point where Clarkson made a ton of sense for this team. That point's gone. That, you know, you've already passed that point. You've already filled that spot. And you can't go to Malik Monk and say, look, we're going to trade you. I guess you could, but you got to wait till December 15th. The problem that you have is that he's De'Aaron Fox's guy. And you also went to Fox and sort of used that relationship a little bit to make sure you landed Monk. So you're pot committed.
And guys in the league look down on that, right? Like, for you to sign somebody and then trade them right away, I think is not exactly the best look.
Yeah, like it's like Moneyball. It's what the A's have done forever, where they go and they sign a guy and they hope that he works out, and then mid-season they go trade him for prospects to fill up their minor league system. You know, they did it with Bethancourt this year. Like, it's kind of what they do. They try to look for like reclamation projects, fix them, put them out there, like let them shine in a specific role. and then trade them. It doesn't always work in the NBA. Plus, you know, the NBA has like these training wheels that they put on you, where you can't like do something crazy like go off a jump. What you can do is wait until December 15th, and if things aren't working out, you can make a trade early in the season. But even that, you know, like I don't think the Kings are going to go trade Malik Monk or go trade, you know, a group of players and then basically just put Malik Monk on the pine.
And also, what's like Utah's intrigue in this? You know, I imagine at this point that they're probably looking for draft assets. Yep. I'm not trading, from Sacramento's point of view, I'm not trading a first-round pick for Jordan Clarkson. Is Rashawn Holmes of that much interest to Utah? I wouldn't imagine so. I think that there's a chance that as it approaches the deadline, or maybe as we get closer to the actual training camp and start of the season, that a team that is a real lottery or a real championship contending team, that's the sort of team that could be willing to give up a first-round pick for Jordan Clarkson. I saw something floating around about like Milwaukee today. Like, I think that sort of team makes sense to give up a first-round pick or some draft capital when they're willing to, you know, go swap that for a guy that they think is going to improve their already good chances this year. I think even from Utah's perspective, it's hard to figure out a deal with Sacramento right now.
Yeah, I mean, look, the Kings have a ton of second-round picks as well. I think they've got like 3 or 4 extra second-round picks over the next 5 drafts. So I bring that up because, like, I'm not sure you're going to be able to get a first. And I think if you're Utah, getting 2 seconds for Jordan Clarkson or 3 seconds and a salary dump might actually be a good thing, especially if you are concerned at all that Clarkson might opt into his $14.2 million for next year. Now, he might not. And even if you're the Kings, you could give up assets for him. But then what does that mean? Like does that mean that you're just going to ask Davion Mitchell to play like 18 minutes a game? Does it mean you're going to ask Monk to play like really, really deep off the bench? Are you going to eat into all of the minutes at the small forward spot where Harrison Barnes is playing, and then shift Harrison Barnes to the 4 and eat into Keegan Murray's minutes and not play Trey Lyles or Chimezie Metu at all? Like the impact of a deal like that would be pretty like catastrophic for what you're trying to build right now. It would be like dropping a gigantic bomb in what the Kings are doing. Now, that's why, like, I still think the Kings could make a trade between now and the start of the season, and I also think that they could make a trade early in the season or by the trade deadline. But it would be more to address a long-term answer at the small forward spot where Harrison Barnes is entering the final year of his deal. And so, yeah, I think it's going to be a little complex, but I'm thinking that the Kings are mentioned because Danny Ainge wants to drum up value in Jordan Clarkson and potentially getting himself into like some sort of mystery bidding war with these teams that don't really exist. And at this point, the Kings are one of those teams that, you know, did kick the tires on him at one point. I'm sure they did because they've been interested in the past and different front offices, but also I think this front office had interest at one point. And there was a point where we even read what was one article where the Kings had a deal worked out with the Cavs to bring Jordan Clarkson in, and then Vivek needed to go. Well, this was the story.
Yes, it was the Jason Anderson piece that was kind of talking about Vivek meddling a little bit. And I think this is when Clarkson got traded to, I forget where he ended up. Maybe it must have been Utah.
Yeah.
And he was, I believe expiring at the time. So it was a pretty cheap ask. And I think it was something about Yogi Ferrell being, it was not much from Sacramento's point of view that needed to be involved. But yeah, that was a reporting. That was Jason Anderson earlier this year.
Yeah. And the reporting there was that, that Vivek needed to call a couple of other front office personnel and do his due diligence on Jordan Clarkson and whether the Kings should make that deal. And in the meantime, they found another deal and just went with it and said, whatever, we're not gonna wait for you. You can, meddle all you want. We're gonna move on to the next team. Anyway, so yeah, the Kings have had interest in Jordan Clarkson in the past. It just doesn't really make any sense, right?
No, if they're gonna spend an asset, I would go get a wing or a forward. Like if you're talking Utah, I'm interested in Jared Vanderbilt more than anybody else on that team. Has this year and 1 year left at about 8.5 million between those 2 years. He can't shoot, but he's genuinely one of the better rim protectors in the league. Like, I think defensively, he's a really good fit alongside Sabonis. And his salary is a little bit easier. I was trying to think up something yesterday. Could you send Terence Davis to a third team and a second round pick to Utah? And then the other team is also sending a second round pick. Like, say it's Minnesota was something that I just cooked up trying to figure something out. And all of a sudden Utah's getting two second round picks for Jared Vanderbilt, and you're giving up Terence Davis. Like, Vanderbilt or some other wings are definitely the guys that I would more so target.
Yeah, I mean, if you're the Kings, even like his contract is what, like 2.6 million, something like that. Like, when you're below the cap, when you're below like that level of salary, you can swap guys out pretty easily. So I wouldn't doubt
he's got 4.3 this year, 4.6 next year.
Oh, 4.3. Okay. So I mean, again, you could package Chimezie Metu and Trey Lyles and actually get it done. You could send Alex Len to Utah and get that deal done. So it would just be on what is the compensation that they want. And Danny Ainge might be in a market where he would take on 2 second-round picks, but that's kind of a player that, he has limited ability to expand on who he is as a player. And to be honest, it reminds me a little bit of like the Rashawn Holmes situation, just a younger version. And, maybe a little bit better rebounder. But again, you're talking about a guy with like some limitations to his game that doesn't mesh with who you have on your bench already. And that would be kind of an issue. I would be intrigued by that to go get him. But at the same time, I don't really think the Kings have a need at the power forward spot for this season. And if we get back to the Sasha conversation, if he does come over next season, then you're looking at some issues there. I guess if you looked at Vanderbilt as a center, I'm with you. Like, go ahead and get a young asset, but just don't give up too much. And I don't think 2 seconds is too much to give up, especially when the Kings, just sold 1 second and traded another second for Vezenkov in this last draft. I don't think they value second-round picks all that much.
Does not seem like it. There's going to be an endless extra second-round pick because one of these second-rounders is bound to get traded for 2 future seconds, and it's just an endless cycle, it seems. So,
yeah.
But I think point being, to bring it full circle to the Clarkson conversation, said it a couple times, but just where I'm at is like it would take some sort of assets to get Clarkson. And I don't think that from Sacramento's point of view, they should be spending those assets to go and get another shooting guard instead of wing or a forward.
Yeah, that does make a lot of sense to me. And then just so we're on the same page here, Sacramento has a 2023 second-round pick from Indiana, a 24 pick from Dallas, a 25 pick from Portland, a 28 pick from Dallas, and then, of course, they have their own first round going out, which is, the heavy protected, the 1 through 14 in 2024, 1 through 12 in 2025, 1 through 10 in 2026. And then if it's not relayed, then the Kings would have to convey its 2026 and 27 second-round picks. But second-round picks don't fall under the Stepien rule, and so they don't matter. It doesn't matter if you trade every year of second-round picks. No one's going to get on you for that. But that means that as of right now, the Kings have in the 23, 24, 25, and 25. So the next 3 drafts, I think they have a total of 6 second-round selections. And so that's where I think you can improve your team, especially if you run into a team like Utah that's looking for as many assets as possible. Right?
Absolutely. Yeah. Say this as we were talking up Keon Ellis. I got a Jemias Ramsey cut out behind me. I still have faith in Robert Woodard. So second rounders do have some sort of value, but you definitely got to hit. They're hit or miss.
Yeah, and the Kings miss. I mean, Justin James, Kyle Guy,
Jemias Woodard. Yeah.
What was the one dude they drafted with the last pick?
I know who you're talking about, but I don't know the name off the top of my head.
Varange or something. I can't remember. His last name starts with an M, and I don't think he even plays basketball anymore. and he was drafted like 2 years ago.
Yeah.
Maybe 3 years ago. Yeah. Anyway, yeah, I think this, like, so, again, I wrote for, on Wednesday on the Kings beat, I wrote about the interesting stuff going on with the shooting guard position and sort of how I see that might work itself out. What do you think? Just off the, oh, there we go. Vanya Marinkovic, 60th pick in the 2019 NBA draft by the Sacramento Kings. Yeah,
he'll come over eventually.
Yeah, he's now a 25-year-old playing in Serbia. I'm not even sure again that he still plays basketball at all. But yeah, it's possible he's just a tall guy walking around the street. Yeah, it's tough. That's not exactly what you want to do with your second round picks, is just squander them. Yeah, but Brendan, like, if you were to, like, just big picture right now, again, I think we're sort of in agreement on what's going to happen at the point guard position. That's going to bleed over into the shooting guard spot. So there's probably only 36 minutes available at the shooting guard spot. You're probably going to need 16 to 20 minutes at the small forward spot for these players that you have in the backcourt. Where are you at if you were to say, number one, who's going to be your starting shooting guard to open the season?
Easily Kevin Huerter.
You're projecting Kevin Huerter. Okay.
Yeah, it's really no question to me. I see a lot of people that really believe in Malik Monk. I think Malik Monk is a great microwave spark plug player off the bench. I think that Kevin Huerter is a lot better passer. I think he has the same sort of shooting ability, maybe not the same self-creation, but I don't know that you need self-creation from your starting two guard personally. When you have Fox and Sabonis out there, I think it's more about complementing those guys rather than going and getting your own bucket. Better passer. I think he's a much better defender. If you're just talking about the size difference, 6'7" for Kevin Huerter, I think is very intriguing. And he showed an ability to kind of guard point of attack initiators on opposing teams. Like in the play-in game that Atlanta played last year, he's the one that's guarding LaMelo Ball. He's the one that's guarding Darius Garland. And I think that's intriguing. So you can give De'Aaron a little bit of a break when it comes to that end of the floor. So it's pretty easily Kevin Huerter for me. Is that where you're at?
Yeah, that's where I'm at. Where are you at? Like, if you were to guess on Kevin Huerter's minutes, what do you think he's going to play this year?
Yeah, that's an interesting one. I think that you're talking high. I think that there's a lot of twos is where this issue is, right? It's easy to throw out a high number and think that Huerter should play a lot, but then it's like, okay, where does Davion fit? Where does Monk fit? Where does TD fit at all? I still think that you're seeing 28 to 30 minutes for Huerter, though. I think he's going to play a decent amount at the three. In my mind, kind of a first sub that makes a lot of sense because I think you see Fox, Huerter, Barnes, Murray, Sabonis. I think from there you could put Monk in and take one of Barnes or Murray out and slide Huerter down to the three. I almost kind of think of Huerter as the backup three and the starting two in a weird way. So I think that there's going to be a lot of minutes for Huerter because he's one of those more versatile players if you don't feel comfortable with a Okpala or a Bazemore or anything like that as your backup three. So I'm going to say like 30 minutes here.
Yeah, that's where I'm at. I'm at 30 minutes. I think he will start. And again, this isn't a knock on Malik Monk. And I know that Fox and Monk are probably going to play quite a bit together because they do have chemistry. And so I think it gives them, like, it gives Mike Brown some intriguing, options when he's switching, moving players in and out of the rotation, like in game. But the thing I like about Huerter is exactly what you said. 6'7", he can defend multiple positions. I think he can defend the 1, the 2, and the 3. I like him more defending the 2 and the 3 more than I like him defending the 1. I think De'Aaron Fox needs to defend his own position this year. But I also think that Huerter, like, his defensive metrics were hurt by the fact that he played alongside Trae Young, who doesn't play any defense at all. And so you really had this situation where he was forced to defend all of these players. And I don't think that will be the case this year. I think Fox will be improved as a defensive player. I don't think he'll be a top-tier defensive player, but I think he will improve. And I think you can more play Herter straight up as a 2 or when you slide him into the 3. And I agree with you. I think he is the backup 3 at this point. And that's just because you have so many options in the backcourt. And so I think that there's going to be times where we see, again, the starting lineup with Fox, Herter, and Barnes. But I think you're going to see Fox, Monk, and Barnes. I mean, and Herter. I think you're going to see Davion and Fox with Herter. I think his ability to move around and play different positions is huge. And I'll also say this: he is a player who, like, if your starting lineup is what we project, Fox, Herter, Barnes, Keegan Murray, and Sabonis, that kind of puts Herter as your 4th/5th option on the offensive end in the starting lineup. But that doesn't mean that he's not going to see a big boost in his shot attempts. I think he's just one of those players that moves around the perimeter, finds open spots, is, basically cocked and ready. He's going to shoot as soon as he catches it. And as long as you're finding him in the flow of the offense, he's going to be really, really impactful. And I know when they traded for him, I called him sort of the poor man's Klay Thompson. And I'll stand by that. Like, he's a really, really good shooter. He probably can shoot the ball better than what we've seen in his last few years in Atlanta. But I also think he's a solid defender. Is he a great defender? No. But he's a big shooting guard that knows his role and is always ready to fire. And I think he can really be impactful for this team. And I think there are certain nights that you won't be able to take him off the court. But then other nights, I think he is going to be right at the 30-minute per game mark. And that's what I wrote today. I thought he would be around the 30-minute per game mark.
I think he's such a smart player. Like, he's such a perfect connective piece as alongside Fox and Sabonis. Like, I think on both ends of the floor, like, he's not a phenomenal defender, but I think he holds his own there. He's not a liability, which I think is what you obviously you'd want something better than that, but for everything he brings on the offensive end, where I think he does everything well, very similar to a Harrison Barnes, that I think that those are just like the perfect type of complementary players. 41.9% on catch and shoot threes. Him and Malik Monk actually had the exact same percentage when it came to catch and shoot threes. The range is ridiculous. It's a couple steps behind the 3-point line, and guys are closing out on that, and he'll attack the closeouts. Not great at getting to the rim and finishing there, but he has a really good in-between game in that mid-range that kind of still allows him to punish guys that are closing out hard. So I'm really excited for Kevin Herter. I think the most ideal scenario, I think there's a world where Kevin Herter's in most improved player conversations, just being able to get more shots up compared to playing alongside a really ball-dominant guy like Trae Young. And I know that Fox and Sabonis are going to take the primary are going to be your main usage guys, but I think that playing off of those two could really benefit Herter, and I'm really excited to see how he looks in Sacramento next year.
Yeah, the crazy thing about his stats is he is an incredible, every level, he's a 3-level scorer. Does he score a bunch at the rim? No, but he also never played with Domantas Sabonis or a big man that passed like Sabonis at all. So I'm excited to see what he looks like as a cutter. And he's a big guy, so if he cuts and he's being defended by a guard and he gets to near the rim, it's easy finish because he's a big, strong guy. The one problem I have with him, which is something that I will continue to harp on because it's something I harped on with Buddy Hield, he shoots 0.7 free throws per game. That's an embarrassment for a shooting guard to shoot 0.7 free throws per game. And I know, I think it was last year, the year before. It was the year before. I think Buddy Hield shot 0 free throws in 33 of the 71 games he played in. That can't happen, but Buddy Hield averages 1 free throw attempt per game more than Kevin Herter. And to me, that's just unacceptable. Learn how to draw contact, learn how to take a hit. And those are issues that will limit his overall scoring ceiling. So, like, if I'm looking at Herter, and I easily can come up with 3 points per game that I think he will get, he's probably going to average like 2.2, 2.3, 2.4 more 3-point attempts per game than he did last year in Atlanta. Because that's kind of going off of what Buddy Hield averaged. But, we're looking at a guy who averaged 5.6 3-point attempts per game. That's nothing. That guy, he should at least be at 8 and more like 9 or 10 per game, just because he's a really, really good 3-point shooter, and he's going to have that opportunity in Sacramento. So I think I can get him up to 15 points per game without any like fudging with the numbers at all. It's just go ahead and shoot like 2.2 threes per game, and he'll get there. Where he's going to take that next step where he's 17, 18 points a game is he has to get to the line. He has to get to the line 2 or 3 times per game. And I know, again, the comparison to Klay Thompson, but there's been seasons where Klay Thompson averages around 1 free throw attempt per game. And it's because he gets a shot off so quick. But Klay Thompson finds ways to score other than just a 3-point line. And Herter has that potential as well. I just think that like he's going to have to get to the line. That's it. Like you got to figure out how to get contact. I know the Kings brought in a guy. His name is Don. I can't remember his last name. And he is a consultant who was an NBA official for a long time. And he comes in and works with the players on how to draw flat fouls, on what it is that refs are looking for, on how to, have conversations with officials. Like there's all kinds of things that Don talks to the players about. But when it comes to Herter, like he needs to have like really honest conversations if he's going to be if Don is going to be there this year. He needs to have some really honest conversations about, look, man, like you got to get fouled on a 3-point attempt once every 2 games or so just to get that number up. And that's really the only way you got to get more involved and more physical and take more hits. And hopefully that's something that Herter can do. Let's shift to Monk. I think we both kind of have the same view of Monk. But what is it that you expect as far as minutes from him when you consider, again, like start adding up the numbers? If Herter's going to play, 30 minutes and he only had 36 at the shooting guard spot after we get done with the 2 starters and with Mitchell and Fox, okay, 6 minutes. How many more minutes can you steal from the shooting from the small forward spot? Like, where are you at with what you think Monk's going to do?
Yeah, with adding all those overalls, I think that there's a little less minutes for Davion at the shooting guard spot than maybe you do, and I think most people do. I'm a little bit hesitant there. I guess I'm a little skeptic of Davion until I see that 3-point shot actually go down at a better rate, but understand why there's reason to believe. Like Malik averaged 28 minutes per game last year with the Lakers. I mean, he was just the best shooter on their team for a team that desperately needed shooting. I think that's an unrealistic expectation, and like year prior to that, I know his Charlotte stint didn't go amazingly, but 20 minutes the year before that, and then you look at 19, 20, 21.3 minutes per game. I think you're talking closer to that compared to the 28. Like I think that you're talking 24 minutes for Malik Monk. Like I think that's sort of the range that you have to talk, and even that feels a little high. Like I could see a 22 being sort of where you're at with Malik Monk. I think that it's going to be maybe a little bit of variance game to game, because there's some times where shots are going down and you're going to want to keep him out there. Like you're just going to want to ride the hot hand and let him keep going. So I think that there will be a okay amount of variance game to game, depending on if the shots are going down. But I think we're talking about 22 to 24 minutes for Monk.
Okay. Yeah, I think I had him like 25 to 27. But even that, I really have a tough time. Like, and it's not because I don't like Malik Monk. It's that I'm looking at the overall numbers and like, okay, where are you going to put guys? And again, like if we're talking like at a bare minimum, Fox playing 35 and Davion playing 25, that's 60. And you only got 96 minutes in the backcourt. So you got 36 minutes. You put Herter's 30 in there. You got 6 minutes left. And so it's really going to come down to how many minutes can you steal at the small forward spot. And I think that, if you're going to steal 20, then that's putting you at like 26 minutes for Malik Monk. If you're going to steal 18, then it's less. And that means again that Harrison Barnes is playing 30 minutes at the small forward, and that wouldn't have him at the power forward all that often. Yeah, I don't know. I think it's interesting. Like, I think it's going to be a really tough battle, and then it leads us to the question, like you talk about Keon Ellis, we talk about Sam Merrill, but Terence Davis is in a battle for like whether he's in the rotation or not, and it's too bad because I think he is a quality player, and I think he showed last season that he can play the 2 and the 3. And he was actually really good. The Kings were at their best for like the little short stint where he was their starting small forward. That's when I thought that they were the most energetic and fun team that they had last season, which wasn't a lot of fun, didn't have a lot of energy. But that's a guy where you kind of look at what he was able to do there. I don't think he fits. Like, I think in a perfect world that you would find a way to get him 15 to 18 minutes on the floor and like run a bunch of 3-guard sets. But I think you can run 3-guard sets, a bunch of them, without him playing minutes. And it really does come down to injuries. And then it comes down to like Kent Bazemore or Terence Davis. Kent Bazemore, Terence Davis, or Trey Lyles, Chimezi Metu. Like, you start to quickly run out of minutes when you start moving this thing around, especially if they intend on playing, like, what are you going to do with Richaun Holmes? So 35 minutes for Sabonis at the 5, but Richaun Holmes, if he's going to play more than 13 minutes, he's got to play the 4. He's stealing minutes from Keegan, stealing minutes from Harrison Barnes. Like, it just, all of this seems like it leads to bad things for a couple of these players. There will be plenty of players in Sacramento who are just flat out not in the rotation early in the year.
Yeah, and I think when it comes to just like flat looking at minute per game totals, a lot of these are obviously skewed by times when players are injured. Like Davion's minute total last year of 27 is probably skewed a little bit, obviously, from those last 15 or whatever games where he's playing 35 or however long that he's out there. So I still think you'll see Terence Davis's number somewhere between like 12 to 15 at the end of the year, maybe even a little bit higher. But I think it is definitely injury assurance, and say Malik Monk doesn't have a shot going down, it's like you're comfortable going to Terence Davis. And I think that Terence Davis is a guy that I could see impressing enough that it's like, okay, we have to figure out how to get him out there. I don't know that I'm already at that point, but I think that he could show that he's a solid defender who also hits his shots and has an ability to put the ball on the floor and get to the rim as well. So I think that there is a world where you have to figure out how to get Terence Davis minutes, but going into the year, I think that's going to need to be proven rather than just given right away.
Yeah. I feel bad for Terence because, again, I thought he was playing really well when he got injured. And injuries, like, you only get a certain amount of opportunities in the league. To your point, too, like, Davion Mitchell played in his final 33 games, he averaged 32 minutes per game. So that's where, like, his big push, and even late in the year, you can even look at there's a section of games where he ended up playing quite a bit once Fox was out, but, like the 30 to 35 minutes per game type deal. I feel bad for Terence because I know that he's put in the work. He's been in Sacramento a ton. Yeah, over his last 12 games, Davion Mitchell averaged 39 minutes per game. So that 27 minute per game is completely skewed by that set of games, probably by like 3 minutes per game. I would put him more around the 24, 25 before that injury. And
you
I
take
think
those 12 out and it's 25.5 minutes per game.
Yeah. So I think he's going to play a lot, though, this season. And again, like Terence Davis, I think it's one of the good things that we're seeing from this team right now is that, we have the guys playing in EuroBasket. But outside of that, a bunch of these guys are in Sacramento already. We saw them at the Kendrick Lamar concert. We've seen pictures of these guys like in the gym already, putting in time together, spending time together, like off the court. Those are valuable things that are happening right now, and I'm kind of excited to see how that translates this year. especially, like there is like having some sort of common goal and everybody being on the same page and everybody having an understanding of what this season means. That does actually have a tremendous amount of value. And so I'm kind of intrigued to see if the Kings can put it all together, because they haven't been able to for so long. So maybe this is one of those years where something goes right. Anything goes right.
Is it different for these handful of guys to be working out at this time of year? Or I guess I think of like the Mo Harkless runs that were going on in LA last year. Is it kind of typical?
No, I mean, at this point, like the first week of September, most players are back. That's typically what happens. But we started to see like late August, some of the players were back in SAC, and that's good. Fox was back before we got to September. Davion's been here on and off all summer. Chima Monecki has been in Sacramento a ton. Rashawn Holmes has been in Sacramento a ton. So there are a bunch of guys that are here. Even if you go back to was it Mike Brown's introductory press conference where we looked around and, Davion came in and sat down, but Terence Davis and De'Aaron Fox and Rashawn Holmes all came in the room that day too. That's a good thing. That means that they were there. And I know that there's been at least 2 major like group get-togethers with this team during the summer where players have hung out. And I would say like that's playing. And then I also believe that a lot of these guys were at De'Aaron Fox's wedding, last month. And so like they have spent some time together, and it's just about bonding, especially when you have so many new pieces, because a lot of this will depend on how quickly they bond, how quickly, Mike Brown is able to get his staff to kind of meld together and then have their defined roles and who's stepping in where and how all this stuff is going to, like how you disseminate your information, like through which people and who is in charge of which players. So like Luke Laux is clearly going to be like De'Aaron Fox's guy, but there will be coaches that have like 3 players that they kind of like talk to and work with all the time. And you got to start like breaking those things down. This coaching staff is huge. Again, how many new players? Like we've talked about it, only 3 players are left on this roster from when Monty McNair took over, and we're entering the beginning of year 3. I think this is right about when he got hired last 2021. Yeah, he's just been on the job like 2 years. It's pretty crazy.
It's definitely crazy to think about. And I don't know, hopefully we're due for an extension at some point. We'll kind of see how
that goes. I don't know. We've covered that enough, but it is a very weird scenario to me.
I've checked in multiple times. Yeah, and I've talked about this on D-Lo and Casey a bunch of times as well. It's just a weird situation. It is. It's a very strange situation. I'd like to say that, that they'll figure it out, but at the same time, like maybe they won't. And, I think the Kings would be at a loss at this point because I think he's done a pretty good job of piecing this thing together and flipping everything around and rebuilding this thing on the fly. Through a pandemic, through, shortened schedules and weird stuff and, some injuries and all that stuff. It's been an interesting 2 years, even the off-court stuff over the last 2 years. Like there's plenty of stuff, a coaching change, 3 coaches, like Monty McNair's on his 3rd coach. He didn't hire all of them, but he's on his 3rd coach. I mean, that's in itself a crazy stat.
I've covered like 30 games, James. I'm about to be on my 3rd coach.
There you go. Yeah. I think this is my 9th. Mike Brown is my 9th head coach.
Yeah.
Covering this team in what will be 13 years.
Crazy.
Okay. Do you have any factor caps for us?
Okay
if you don't
off the top of my head. No, I think I got some listener submitted ones, but I don't have them in front of me, so I'll have them ready for next episode.
Okay, cool. Sean should be back next week. We're just flying solo because he, again, is at the Republic game out in Orlando. I'm super excited. Hopefully the Sac Republic are gonna have a good showing, and it'd be amazing if they won. It'd be super exciting. So that would be good for Sacramento. Major League Soccer, MLS, would be great for Sacramento. But winning a championship like this would also go a long way towards finding that whale that they need to step in to take this team to the next level and get them into the MLS. That would be super exciting.
Yeah. Orlando's obviously shaking in their boots if they feel like they need to send somebody to scout it out. So
I guess, yes, really strange. I would just think that, like, aren't all the games that the Republic have played, aren't they all on YouTube? But then again, it is like lower level soccer, and so you're like, what camera angles? Like, is there multiple camera angles? Like, so you're not really. It's not like you're watching an NFL game where there's 17 different camera views of every single play, and you can watch and see tendencies. So I get it. I just don't get the cheating thing. That's not cool.
Yeah.
Especially not leaving a closed practice. Like, what are you doing? That's weird. You're just adding like this weird wrinkle that soccer is going to have to deal with afterwards. Okay, so we do have the business of basketball. I'm going to go with this. Brenden, this is your first build up to training camp. Like, what is it that you're looking forward to that is going to happen, like media day, that you haven't been to a media day before? You haven't been to like some of these things. What are you excited about?
Well, media day, I'm probably going to ask a lot of fun questions, which I think is typically what it seems like happens. But just like I think I've been taking notes with a lot of the NFL, what looks like media days or these training camps. They're asking a lot of fun questions of like, who would you least want to date your sister? And just random questions that I think are a lot of fun and lead to these funny answers and get a taste for different people's personalities and things like this.
Brendan's going to be that guy.
I am probably going to be that guy. I'm not going to lie, to an extent on media day. But I think that what's really interesting to me going into this year is the difference between the chemistry and I guess like energy vibe around the team. Because in my mind, that's going to be a big improvement from last year, where I think there was this weird like dark cloud in the room of Buddy and Bagley, and I think Luke Walton could have fallen into that as well, of just kind of counting down the day until those guys are gone. So I'm going to be curious to try to get a read for the vibe around the team and see how different that is and maybe the difference that makes. What are you kind of looking for this year with being more experienced? What feels different going into this year?
Yeah, I think I want to see how Mike Brown's energy, like, how it's received, because I think that like he's got such a positivity to him, and like, how does that go over, and how does it go over when things go bad? Like, is he a guy who's going to call players? I want to see how he handles that. Like, is he a coach that's going to call players out by name in the press? Is he going to protect his players? Like, what kind of coach is he going to be for us to deal with? It's always, for me, like, they're new case studies every time. Like, every single coach is different. Every personality is totally different. You got a ton of interesting, like, moving pieces with this team. I want to see, like, how tough the competition is for these last roster spots. Because I think that the roster is pretty tough to break into, but the Kings have given a lot of guaranteed money. I just want to see if, like, this is the moment where, like, some of these guys like take their careers serious. Not that they haven't in the past, but take them, like, the wins and losses, and they accept the fact that it's on them, and that the only way to get out of this thing is to, fight with the guys you got. And so I'm kind of intrigued by a lot of, like, moving pieces as far as, like, showing up. Like, it's like back to school, and I've done it so many times that, it's kind of lost its luster a little bit. But there should be a lot of positivity, walking into this season, and I want to see how long they can hold on to that. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. And hopefully the start is better than I'm expecting, to be honest, because I'm kind of thinking that I wouldn't be surprised to see, I guess, growing pains or just an adjustment period, getting used to a new system and so many new players. But the Kings don't exactly have a lot of wiggle room or room for variance when it comes to the play-in race and what their goals are for this season. So I think the start is going to tell me a lot about what my expectations are for this year.
Yeah, that's interesting. And I'll say this too, like I know Sean has brought this up a couple of times, and that there is always an adjustment period when it comes to the coach and like a learning curve and all that stuff. But I also feel like the Kings are starting from a better place than some of the other teams that they're surrounded by. So, like Mike Brown is a much more experienced coach than Darvin Ham, who's coaching the Lakers this year, and Chauncey Billups. Like he's the jury's still out on him if he's a coach or not. And so if I'm the Kings, I'm okay with the fact that I know that those are two teams I'm going to compete with, and I'll take Mike Brown over Chauncey Billups or Darvin Ham at this point in their careers any day of the week. And so I think if you start looking around and start piecing together some of these things, again, New Orleans has a bunch of talent, but Willie Green was able to do some interesting stuff in the second half. He also started off slow. There is no starting off slow. You're not going to be able to start off slow this season, especially with the teams that are around you. And, is the Rudy Gobert experiment going to work out in Minnesota? So, like, there are so many different things that I think that the Kings just kind of, like, they know who they are. They're walking in with, two major cogs and a bunch of shooters. And, like, how do they grow from here? And how do they get better? And, hopefully it's a positive thing going forward.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see for sure. I'm optimistic that at very least it's going to be entertaining and watchable basketball more nights than not, and I don't think that could be said last year and probably a handful of years prior. So if nothing else, that's a positive in my mind.
That's very true. Okay, Brenden, do you have any final thoughts?
I don't think I do. I guess a shameless plug for my Twitch streams. I've been really enjoying doing those.
Oh, yeah.
So if anybody wants to check that out, I'll probably be watching the final Sabonis game that he just played again, Vezenkov games. I got to catch up on Alex Len and plan on doing it throughout the year. So those have been fun, but that's all I really got, James.
Okay. Yeah, Brendan's been doing a lot of work. Is it what is the Twitch handle that you're using?
It's twitch.tv/BrendanNBA.
Oh, okay. Sweet. And you're running them on Twitter as well?
I'm tweeting them out on Twitter, but I guess they are only going up on Twitch at the moment. There's a lot of copyright stuff that Twitch is the only one that doesn't seem to have any issues. So
okay, that makes sense. Yeah. But I think it's cool. I think it's cool you're doing something different, and I totally suggest it for those of you who are out there who are looking for some escapism, some summer basketball, like in the dog days. We have not, let's see, today is September 7th. We do not have a happy hour scheduled yet, but I hope to have another happy hour before we get to training camp. And those are for premium subscribers to the Kings Beat only. They're a blast. Last month's Pete Youngman happy hour was spectacular. Absolutely love Pete, and something that you just can't get anywhere else at all. So I'm going to work over the next couple of days to try to find a guest for later this month, and hopefully that works out. But we're going to keep rolling here at the Kings Beat, start ramping up. Again, you're going to see more position profiles, more strengths and weaknesses of this team heading into training camp and all that stuff. And, you never know. Maybe there is another trade. We've had sort of the big dam break when it comes to Donovan Mitchell. Now what happens from there? Do the Kings get involved in something else here? Do they feel comfortable enough that this is a team that they're going to walk into the season with? We got all kinds of questions still need to be answered. So that's going to do it for this edition of the Kings Beat podcast. Make sure to give us a thumbs up. Make sure to subscribe to the channel. Make sure to give us a rating and review if you're listening to the podcast on Apple or Spotify or anywhere else that you're getting your podcasts. But thanks for tuning in. So for Brenden Nunes from the Kings Pulse podcast and myself, James Ham, thanks for tuning in. We'll see Sean next week back on the pod, and we'll see you guys probably Tuesday, Wednesday again. So thanks for joining us. Go Republic.